The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Florida's great.
Well, cool. Why don't you start? It sounds like you had like something that sparked something. So I'd love to hear what you're thinking of.
Yeah. So I sold my last company on August 31st of 2018. And it was a, kind of stressful sale. And one of our founder friends, David, he said, hey, what I'd recommend is you go away into the woods and just go away for a retreat and by yourself. And so I rented a cabin in the woods in upstate New York. I rented a car, drove up there. I was there for 3 days by myself. And all I took was books and a journal. There was no internet there. I was in this little town in the woods. I rented a one-person cabin. It rained every hour of every day I was there. And there were notices about black bears. So I was scared to go hiking. So I thought I was going to get eaten by a bear. So like I go up there but I had this like amazing experience. I wrote a lot. It was just a really, really fantastic experience. So I decided to make it an annual thing. So every year because I did that one sold the company end of August. I did the retreat like September 12th or so of that year. And so every year I have it on my calendar. It's an annual thing on my calendar to do a retreat, like to do like a solo retreat. This year I did it a little bit differently because we just passed when this time would be. This year I did a little bit differently. And I said, like okay, here's what I used to do. I would look at all the pictures I took over the last year. So everything in my camera roll. And then I would make notes of the things that gave me highs and gave me lows. I would look at my calendar week by week for the last year. So I would go through and I would make notes. Ooh, that was a really good one. That was a great. And then I would make all these notes about the people that gave me a lot of lift in life, like good people in my life, and then things that brought me down in life. The challenge is that takes like a day and a half. It takes forever. And it requires really specific, like you can't do 30 minutes of that. And then, you really have to focus. So, which brings me to this idea of a month in review. So a month in review is instead of doing that once a year, I'm committing to doing that once a month. So on the first Saturday of every month, and I started it. So I just did one I did at the beginning of October and it was for September. I asked these questions and I have this reminder on my calendar to bring it up. And the questions are, what were my biggest wins this month? And that's the way I do that is I also journal. So I look at my journal, but I go week by week through my calendar, which is much more manageable to do for a month instead of, for a year. So what were my biggest wins this month? What were my biggest realizations? That's the second question. Realizations is like a nice way of saying what bad things happened this month. What areas am I most satisfied and least satisfied? And then I broke it down. What areas am I most satisfied? What areas am I least satisfied? What am I going to do more of this month? What am I going to do less of this month? And then what am I thinking about for the upcoming month? And so the concept is just do a month in review. So I did this and it took me about an hour, 45, 50 minutes. Yeah, but I did the same things. I looked at all the pictures I took for the last month because I take screenshots if something happens that makes me go, huh? And then I take pictures of things. So I look at all the all of my pictures I took for that month. And then I look at my calendar for that month. And then I answer these questions. And the annual review was extremely helpful for me, but it just was too much. And so I think that I'm going to be able to get the same amount of value out of this monthly review and maybe even more value because it's more often, right?
Do you save them in a particular way? Like you tag them or you just go through literally your whole photo roll and where do you even keep screenshots? Like I use Sketch. What do you use for keeping screenshots?
I just take the screenshot on my phone. I just take the screenshots. Yeah. So I just look through the full camera roll, like anything I saved, any screenshots, any photos, and then my calendar, I think like you, I'm a pretty judicious calendar updater.
I got to say that this is like one of your superpowers. Probably the kindest thing you've ever done for me was on my 10th anniversary of being in the United States. You created this video of like other people saying kind things about me, which must have taken, I don't know, some humongous in my mind, like a lot of effort. Like it just seems like something that nobody else has ever done for me, and I've never done it for anybody, and so it's just still highly appreciated. So I was gonna say that like going that extra step in effort is like one of your superpower. And I think it's a kind of a founder trait. It takes like taking that one extra step more than what like most people would do to, in this case, to you're just being a good friend. But I think it applies to business and in general.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, but yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a trait of just founders, I guess. Yeah.
Another thing I add is I always get a lot of anxiety from monthly reviews, even preparing for. I have this thing called Forum. We meet every month and we review the month behind, and I always get like a lot of anxiety from that exercise because it's like, oh man, I wish I'd done this. I didn't do as much as I wanted this last month. So I'm trying a new framework for task management and review. And that is to be like question based versus task based. So and this is very recent, we'll see how it goes, but I started being like, well, what question am I gonna try to answer today? And I just write down a question. It might be like a product related question or a business, something I just understand. Like I'm researching some natural learning, understanding stuff. And I'm just like, I just want to understand how speech gets turned into text at a micron level. So how does that work? It's just that's a general question, or it could be a very specific question. But at least so far, I feel, and I write it down in like a Notion or some document, and I get more reward from that. And looking back on that too, like if I look back, the last week, like, oh, I had some questions last week, and here's how I answered them, and here's some links, and that makes me feel good, like I've actually done some work towards answering that question versus a task, which often is like, oh, well, figure out natural learning understanding. It's an insurmountable task. And not only did I procrastinated, but then looking back, I'm like, well, I never really checked that box. So that's a hack I'm working on.
How do you come up with the questions?
Well, just, I guess what I've realized is that's more close to how my mind and work operates than tasks. I don't think of like, hey, I have, this project to do. I don't think in Gantt charts. I don't think in like Asana and Monday and like and subtask. I just think of like, hey, why, like right now we have in our business, even mailing, like sending physical mail is an issue. And so I'm like, gosh, why is that so difficult? And why, like, how does that even work? Like, how does mail get sent and received? Why can't it be digital? Why do I have to rely on this person that checks mail and there's some vendors. So then I do some research into that. So that's, I guess I find it's closer to how our brain operates than tasks.
Love it.
Like I naturally have lots of questions. I wake up with like a million questions every day.
Me and you both.
All right, what else you got? Do you have any news? Any like, you're like the king of news. What do you got you want to talk about in news? Or it could be nothing.
Yeah, I don't have as much news this week. I mean, I think that what, we were talking about last week with the LinkedIn kind of people or with, people claiming that they're head of HR or head CISO or whatnot of companies is not getting any better. It's probably getting worse. I guess, are you going to New York City Tech Week?
So I looked at some events and they all looked, pretty sleazy. And one of them looked interesting. And then they messaged me and they're like, hey, this is only for VCs. Are you a VC? I'm like, well, I've invested in some startups. Like, well, you have to have a fund. You have to be a Gen Z VC. I go, okay. So I'm not going to that. So I have 0 events for next week. But I do have that news I put on there, which I thought was hilarious about the Washington Post wrote this article about Biden not hired a chief technology officer. And whereas Obama had a chief technology officer within 3 months, he hired this guy, Todd Park, that built Athena, which is turned into a dumpster fire. And then a private equity squeezed every dollar out of it. And now it's doing great. And now they're doing Devoted Health, which is actually a better version of the company I'm building right now. Hey, the guy's a superstar. And And so they're like, well, Biden doesn't have a CTO. How can our country operate without a CTO? To me, it's like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, what is the point of a CTO of America? Like that is like,
what do they do?
Purposeless job. And they're like, well, it's to, bridge the gap between Washington and San Francisco, which, is where the technology hub is, which is really not. It's just a shithole. So it doesn't make any sense. None of these people, by the way, that were technology officers before were in Silicon Valley, right? These are like actually were East Coast people. And so I find that pretty funny too. Todd Park lives in Watertown, Massachusetts, so like right outside of Boston. But I guess, so first I just think like it's a ridiculous thing to even have a CTO. They do nothing, and even the previous ones I feel like haven't accomplished like anything. They're supposed to like open up data, and then they like do this big push. Like Todd tried around data, and then after a year or two, they're like, "Oh man, government's so hard. There's no way to open up this data." And they just eventually kind of give up and go to private, VC and startups. So, but yeah, I just thought it was hilarious. And to Biden's credit, hiring a CTO is really, really hard. And so like I was just talking to this entrepreneur, she's trying to find a technical CTO co-founder, and she's like really struggling because she's not technical. And she's like, well, in the end, it's like the best place she's found is like dating apps. So when she go on dating apps, she'll run into all these guys that tend to be like really quality material. They're not great for like her dating, but they're really great potential CTOs. So she like tries to pivot the conversation towards hiring them on the dating apps, which I thought was hilarious. So yeah.
Wait, does that work?
Well, yeah, she's doing it right now. She's like literally, she's saying, I'm dating, I'm like dating CTOs, trying to find the right CTO as we speak.
I'm dating CTOs.
Right.
I love it.
All right. What else you got?
What about everything you were saying here, ideas for how founders handle different things?
Yeah. Want to pick one, or what sparked your interest when I wrote that? What, I guess, is there one that you want to chat about?
Let's do, well, I think that you're much more like the quantified self kind of champion here. That this like workout, all of these things, measuring, what's the glucose monitor you have?
Yeah, I have this. Actually, I just took it off because I have to replace it. But yeah, we could probably do a show on all that. I don't know that I have it. Like I should like line up all the things right now. I'm currently really into the Andrew Huberman podcast. I know I keep mentioning it like every podcast, but this guy is changing the way I do everything. Like one of the recent things was, did you know that when you look at someone, it's harder to pay attention? Like people say like, hey, look at me, pay attention. Right? Like if you're teaching a kid like and it's not paying attention, they're like, hey, look at me, like pay attention. And the fact is, when we do that, like if I look at you right now, I'm like looking, I'm looking at your face. And so I'm like thinking of that. I'm not thinking of like, hey, what am I supposed to say? Like, what am I thinking here? I'm not paying attention. And I actually found that in our last podcast in person, so much harder for me to voice my thoughts when we're like looking at each other in person, as opposed to now where I'm looking at like a point on the screen. I'm not even looking at your face or my face, and I have a so much easier time. So like these are brain studies that he's done that like this is how people better interact. And one hack another friend gave me, another founder, was in Zoom to click those three dots and click the hide self view. And it's been also shown that people actually their anxiety decreases after hours and hours of Zoom if they have that off, right? Because instead of checking yourself out, I'm like, hey, do I look okay? Like, is this all right? Constantly for hours and hours and fucking hours, by just like hiding your self view, people dramatically reduced their anxiety. So yeah, that's a tip for you too.
That's a great tip. Well, any other kind of big ones you've pulled? What about with working out? Like what kind of models have you seen that work well with working out then? Yeah, so I've recently really started working out more. So I use this app called Fitbod, and Fitbod will generate a workout for you. And so
because I don't want to like think while I'm at the gym. I often have a podcast or something else I want to think about, and this just tells you the exact exercise you need to do, and it alternates muscles and it keeps an account, so you log it. It even can do it, by the way, with your AirPods Pro. Like based on your head gestures, it can record the set, so you don't even have to like click on the app when you're in the gym if you use your AirPods Pro. That's pretty cool. And then it adjusts your weight, right? So if you're like, oh, you did 50 pounds yesterday, try 55 this time around. And then, based on which muscles are sore, it'll give you new exercises for other muscles. And so it just takes the thinking for me out of the workout, which I find super helpful. So that's what I use.
I use Heavy, and yours is much better. HEVY. I think yours is much better. I use the Apple Watch app because I don't want to work out and constantly be looking at my phone, to add in. So I love. So if we could do it with the AirPods.
I wonder if Fitbot has a Apple Watch. I'm really considering getting an Apple Watch after you share that article about how awesome the what was that Apple Watch that's like the best?
Oh, the Ultra.
The Ultra. Gosh. Honestly, I just want my heart rate. So I have this longevity doctor that got me into, you really need 3 forms of exercises. So zone 2, which is just slightly out of breath, like a fast-paced walk or light bicycle. So you need a bunch of that 4 times a week, say 30 minutes each. And then you need strength building, which is what I'm using the gym for. You need that 4 times a week or so, 30 minutes. And this is the part I struggle with. The third kind is really zone 5 or high intensity workout, which is like, can be done in different forms. But the way I try to do it is you go 1 minute on a bicycle, like a stationary bike, for as hard as you possibly can. So like my heart rate just goes to like 160, 180 maybe. And then go slow for or stop for a minute until your heart gets back to like under 120. And then you go another minute as hard as you can. And you do that. I'm supposed to do like 10 times, but that's really hard. So I do it like maybe 6 times, 5 times. And so, but so that's the workout. Another workout tip that comes from Huberman is if you listen to 40 hertz, the sound, 40 hertz binaural beats, which is you can find on YouTube. Just Google 40 hertz binaural beats. And if you listen to that for 20 minutes, that's been shown to, like study after study, shown not only to increase your focus and memory retention of what you do afterwards. So don't do it during the activity, but you want to do it before the activity you want to really remember, or a workout, because a workout is also kind of muscle memory and focus too of your body. So I do listen to 40 hertz most days for like 20 minutes in the morning, and that kind of enhances your my workout and focus throughout the day. So he's really big on that. I just got into an argument, by the way, with the guy that was at Sam's party. I won't mention it, but like he was like, no, you're not listening to the right binaural beats. And he gave me this like article they wrote on, like, no, this is the wrong way. So I'm like, I'm currently in an argument about what's the right kind of 40 hertz binaural beat.
It feels unknowable. So you mentioned about the Apple Watch. So I bought all the new Apple devices, right? Went from an iPhone 12 Pro to an iPhone 14 Pro. Went from an Apple Watch Series 6 to a Series 8, the new one. And then I went from AirPods Pro first gen to the AirPods Pro second gen. And so I'm like 3 weeks in to all of them. And what I think is interesting is that kind of none of them are mind-blowingly good. In other words, if I had to do it all over again, I'm not sure any of them are worth the upgrade.
Oh, really?
The new phone stays on all the time. Your screen stays on, and it sounds cool, but in reality, I think it's more distracting than anything because it always looks like you have a notification. Like it's sitting over here right now, but I hated it to start. But now, as like a few weeks have gone by, but is that enough reason to pay for a new phone? It is faster, so it feels faster, and the battery is seemingly much better, but it's unclear if it's because it's just a new battery, right? It's 2 years newer. So it could be the exact same battery from 2 years ago, and it just feels newer, or it just feels better or longer because it's newer. The screen, because I skipped a generation, the iPhone 13 had a newer screen, like the 120 hertz, back to your hertz conversation. And so the new screen feels good. The new AirPods though, so I bought them because I wanted a better mic. So I like you, I think use AirPods on calls a lot, and and sometimes I'm outside. So if I'm walking around, if I'm walking around Manhattan, then it's chaos. No matter where you are, if you're on the street, if you're next to, because I'll walk along the West Side Highway and there's tons of wind coming off the river. So it'll come off the river and then get in my. So I thought, well, I'll buy it because surely they've upgraded, the mics in the last 3 years, and seemingly they haven't. So I think they did, I think they did some, but the most mind blowing part is actually the noise cancellation. So I don't use the noise. Like I don't use, when you get an AirPods Pro, you get 3 modes. There's the normal, transparency, and noise cancellation. I'm always in normal. I just use normal all the time. But what's unbelievable to me is that normal is as good as the old noise cancellation. So you can be in normal mode and you won't hear a car. I almost got hit by a car because in Manhattan, because I didn't hear it pulling up. So that is much better. And the new Apple Watch, I skipped again 2 generations from the 6 to the 8. And it's a little bit bigger, 1 millimeter bigger. It's a little bit faster, but is it really? It does charge faster, so I do like that. But I wish they added a new sensor. Like the heartbeat sensor that you're talking about. That's been in it for 5 generations. So yeah, I'm wondering when will we get like a glucose sensor into the Apple Watch, or something really mind blowing. Because a lot of these devices, I guess the SOS, so the satellite connectivity of the new phones, that's cool, right? Hiking, I hike a lot. You hike a lot. Hiking, have no cell phone coverage. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that's my Apple review.
Good. I agree with you. So you have the newest AirPods?
Yeah, these are.
Did they come with the 3? Like, did they stay in your ear?
Yeah.
I guess the minority that like the pros don't stay in my ear, so I'm stuck with like the old plebe looking ones. I think a lot about people talk about how energy and batteries will change in the next few years, where we'll be able to hold like infinite amount of power in a very tiny space. So just wondering like what possibilities does that unlock for changing the way we interact, like even not charging, you don't have to charge anything ever. Or I don't know. I always think about the phone. You mentioned the phone being glued to our hands. And I wonder, like, is this really the best interface we've been able to create? Like, is there like, what's the next iteration of this? I don't have any answers. I only have questions like like we talked about earlier
today. Yeah, and I'm really curious about the Apple VR. The rumors are it's coming soon-ish, within the next 6-12 months. So that'll be
well, I've looked at the SDK, like the development stuff. What's coming? The hardware or the
brand new hardware?
Yeah, we'll see. We had a meeting yesterday, and the guy was like, last minute, like, hey, let's do it in VR. And what is it, like Spaces.ai or something? And like half the people couldn't connect. They're like, hey, it doesn't say unknown server. Like I can't get. I'm like by the campfire. He's like, it was a great way to waste 15 minutes of a meeting. And then eventually we just went back to Zoom. No, it was I guess it was VR, not AR. But it's like, yeah, it was.
What was it? You joined a virtual world?
It was. You just created like a virtual campfire. His business is in the metaverse, so he's like big in that, and so he was like, hey, let's do it in the metaverse, and we're like, okay, why not?
Whatever that means.
Well, it basically means you just connect to Second Life, or one of like the 20-year later equivalent of being in The Sims, basically. It's like, that's basically what we're in, except much harder to connect because they try to make it decentralized, which basically just means really shitty internet connection, in my experience. So I don't want to decide too much, just in case it does end up being like I end up getting murdered in the metaverse. But it didn't work out. Came back to Zoom.
I think Zoom's great business. All right, what else is on our list?
Well, you want to know, like, so what music do you listen to, like when you work
in
out?
general?
No,
I only listen to podcasts.
but that's not as motivating.
No, it's not very motivating, but it is, I think, mentally motivating. Yeah. I mean, I really, because I get all amped up, I listen to My First Million or listen to New Freakonomics. And I used to listen to this workout podcast or workout Spotify playlist, and it really got me all amped up. You can only listen to it so many times because there's only so many songs. That really right? Like, how many times am I going to listen to this song? Like, I know every word of it. And all I've done is, and so now when I hear these songs outside of working out, it reminds me of working out. And that is.
Wait, is that good or bad?
Well, I think it's fine, but suboptimal, I think. What do you listen to working out?
Yeah, also podcast. I listen to Huberman Show because that podcast is so long that it's hours. So the only time I could listen to it is work out. It's not like I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I gotta commute to work for 2 hours. So yeah,
I don't think anybody in Lincoln drives 2 hours to the farm.
It's a good point. Traffic's pretty light.
The drive to North Dakota, I don't know. So my one of my buddies bought a house down here in Florida, and we were walking around and we found out that they have some friends from Fargo, North Dakota, and one of them bought a house down here 7 years ago, and then another one did. They all own on the same street in Clearwater, which is kind of cool. In case you want to buy.
Right where you're right where the hurricane was, man. Like I still have people that are at our company that don't have power. It's like this is a real. They don't advertise that when people move to Florida.
Yeah, real risk.
But I love how more people are moving to New York. Like, right, like our chapter was like recently. A bunch of people were like, "Oh yeah, I'm just moved back to New York from Florida." And who else was I talking to that? Yeah, this guy just moved back. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But I'm gonna short Florida.
Yeah, I'm long New York.
Oh, wait. So, I see. So, like this monthly reviews for us, I was looking at what are my biggest wins for this month, and I was like, oh my god, what were my biggest wins for this month? But I just realized that was in the context of the earlier conversation. We don't need to actually list our wins.
You're starting to get worried.
Yeah, I'm super psyched for our next guest on the podcast. I don't know if we should name him. Let's not name him. People need to tune in. And then we have a bunch of like cool guests in the hopper. That got me really excited. Started thinking of the people we could bring on here.
Oh yeah,
that's gonna be fun.
I think it's gonna be great. Jack. Well, I won't just say his first name, but yeah. Then I'm on so many sales calls, and some of them I'm starting to think, if you're a founder, this could be great to bring them on. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I like the criteria of like somebody that's real, like somebody asked me like, hey, so how's the business been going? And I was like, hey, it almost died, but it didn't. We survived. We're good. And then she went on to like, she's had some trouble raising money, and this year's been treacherous for raising capital. And I meet with entrepreneurs. I met with this other entrepreneur who was like, oh my God, no, yeah, we're getting term sheets. We're talking to blah, 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 Andreessen's coming in. And
in healthcare?
Yeah. But what I'm trying to show is that the kinds of founders that we want are the ones that are more real about their experience, right? Not the ones that are selling constantly. I mean, it's great that they're selling, and that's actually really good for business, but for the podcast, I don't think, I think we want people that are willing to get more real about the hard stuff, the challenges, as well as the successes, but not framed in that like, we're always crushing it kind of way. So.
Yeah, I do feel that parts of the economy are going well. We sell into every industry, and some of them are decimated. Some of my clients, like my contact at the client, usually somewhere in marketing, their whole team has gotten laid off. So of course they're not continuing their subscription because Bob is getting let go on Friday, and the whole team is gone. And then I can be on a call 30 minutes later, someone in a different industry, and they're manufacturing and they can't hire people fast enough or what have you. So it does feel very, the US is a huge economy and parts of it are doing well and parts of it aren't, but no one is having an easy time raising money, it feels like.
For sure. I mean, even the ones that, and I do know people that legitimately did raise money and a lot of money in the last few months, but even them, amazing businesses had to take, a huge discounted valuation, right? So they're not, I mean, it's great, but it's not 2021. And 2021 is not coming back anytime soon. I think most people are on board now, but some still aren't. So I see like entrepreneurs that are like still like, woo, it's like nothing happened. We're all cool here. Meantime, do you see Tiger is like potentially shutting down its funds or like looking for money? It's like, this is like the biggest fund
in the world. In tech.
I don't know, right? It's like them and SoftBank just ate so many losses on these companies that later stage is hurting. But I think seed is probably not as much.
I think it's good. I think it'll be good for the economy, for it'd be good for tech. It's good, kind of flush out. Also, by the way, I think you and I both, we've raised less than our competitors. I have competitors who've raised 50 times the amount of money that we have. And on some level, that's, I can be really innovative and we can do a good job and be smart. At some level, money is money and it's hard to compete. And so maybe flushing some of that out is good. Maybe that helps some of the people who've raised less money or didn't go as crazy on those things. So
totally, you have, because here's what I see a lot, right? The people that have raised, like I look at even this AI company, we want to use Rasa for natural language processing, and they've raised a bunch of money, and I think they're at a point now where their investors are asking, hey, you guys got to generate revenue, you got to get profitable, we're not raising more money, right? And so they're all of a sudden like, hey guys, why don't you pump the brakes on the technology like innovation and let's put more resources towards sales and like selling, finding a use case and growing customers to pay, which will cause you to make certain trade-offs in product and tech that you wouldn't otherwise. Like we're not going to invest as much in engineering. And so I think a seed company in the same space. So now let's say I'm starting Rasa today. You and me are like, hey, let's build a natural language processing company. Well, we actually have an advantage over Rasa because we're going to say like, hey, we're going to raise, even if we raise very little, a few $100,000, we're going to have a year of runway. It'll be the two of us. Say we're the engineers. We'll build the tech. We'll take the most, by the way, recent developments, because in the past, this would be another topic, but in the past, 6 months to 12 months, AI and tech is kind of, going through a transformation because of not only the GPUs, but just the models and the data and the parameters and these algorithms have exponentially increased, which you see in the results of DALL-E, right, and OpenAI and all these other competitors, and of course Google and Amazon, and they're all fighting on who can do more faster. So a new startup can be like, hey, I'll just use all of that and build on top of like where we're at today. Whereas Rasa, I don't want to pick on Rasa, but like all these other companies, all the companies that are like in the Series B plus range that have technology, guaranteed they are not, they're not in the process of upgrading their tech stack, right? They're like, let's just keep what we got, sell the crap out of it so we can exit Tiger's money, because they're pressuring us every board meeting to save their portfolio. And so, and then they're going to do fine. I'm not worried about them, but I do think from a competitive landscape, the newcomers, the startups have a major advantage in that they can build on the stack today. They don't have this legacy tech to deal with. And I think they'll win out in the end. I think the companies built today will beat the companies that have been around the past 2, 3, 4 years. So.
Well, I also think it's challenging to pivot a company like that, right? So let's say you raised $50 million, you hired 200 employees, you hired all them with this belief that they're changing the world and whatever it is in natural language processing. But now we've got to cut half the staff. And now we're going to change, but that's maybe not what those senior engineers or people signed up for. And so the people who go for the exits maybe were the ones who are most likely to rebuild the platform, and now you don't have. So I think that it creates all these other challenges, which sucks for those companies, but creates real opportunities for people like us, I think.
So true. So I just saw a Greycroft partner left to start her own AI VC fund. And what she said in the press release, which I think was like pretty funny, is that she tried to kind of invest in AI companies today. And Greycroft, well, she didn't name Greycroft, but she just said people, basically old white guys in the VC industry think, the AI years of like 2, 3, 4 years ago, they kind of got burnt on a lot of the investors. And what they said, it's a hammer looking for a nail, right? They have a product, but no. And I saw this actually just yesterday talking to a company that's like AI in our space, and like the team is great, the technology is awesome, but they just don't have use case. They're like, well, what do we, let's try this, let's try real estate, let's try, you guys do healthcare, let's try healthcare, right? Like maybe it'll work in that. Which, look, it's fine if you're OpenAI, which is funded by billions of dollars from Elon Musk to just fuck around for a few years and just give talent to the world, which I think is great for the ecosystem to do that. But if you're a company that's trying to survive, you got to have some use case. So I totally get why the Greycroft partners and these old VCs would be like, hey, you need an actual use case like before you do. But what I also think is interesting is that partner left to start her own fund because she thinks we're at a pivotal moment where that's no longer the case. That we're like shifting into a time where there are real use cases and technology is caught up to fulfilling them in a reliable way. And it's a thesis. I think there's no way to tell if she's right or wrong today on who's right. Greycroft and other folks might be right, but I do think it's interesting.
But think about why that there would be opportunity in a downturn, right? So I want to cut costs. I want to, human labor is a big part of these people's costs. So if AI can actually deliver on some of these things, then sure, of course,
So true, man. It's such a way. It's easier to raise 100 million than, save 100 million. Then, well, you just, raise 100 million like that. You're absolutely right. The humans were cheap, if you will, to add because money was free. So you could just hire more, even for Google or Facebook or an Apple. They weren't inclined to develop tech when you could just like hire more engineers, which is actually kind of a double win because you keep them from your competitors hiring those talented engineers. Exactly. So now you're like lock them in and you don't have to innovate that much because all of the innovation talent and brain power is with you. And they're just chilling playing ping pong over in Chelsea. So everybody's happy. But you're right. Now that those people are all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, now I got to live off of my, $1 million savings that I got while I was at Google. It's like, what am I going to do? Now I think pressure's not quite on those people, but I think it is on the next generation. People they just graduated. They were like, hey, yes. I was going to work at Google. And then Google's like, we just laid off all these people. We're not hiring right now, buddy. So that person who's like super smart, super motivated, super young, like ready to go. They're like, oh, well, maybe I'll do my own thing. Maybe I'll compete with you. Maybe I'll start a better tech. So I think the downturn will be good for startups, or is good. It's already happening.
It's already happening. We're already in it.
Yeah,
we see it, and I'm cautiously, I'm optimistic for us, but it's going to be an interesting time.
Cool, man. Well, shall we wrap it?
I think that's it.
All right. Later.
Woo! Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.